idea called meridian. This meridian cannot be detected. Only the Chinese medicine, medical person will be able to do something about this using acupuncture and so forth. And so most people consider that pseudoscientific because there's no base. You cannot find the reason. You find the various kinds of material base for this kind of meridian points. You cannot. But now some scholars, some Korean scholars in particular, working on Chinese medicine, proved that the meridian is a manifestation of human life, vitality. So if a person dies, then the meridian is gone. So you can never find a meridian simply by anatomical process, because normally we try to analyze, anatomy is mostly performed on corpse. So that's dead. Anyway, I don't want to bother you with that problem. But life is something that cannot be understood in terms of the material conditions that help to serve as the base for the life. And the plants have life, but the animals have this consciousness. You cannot simply reduce consciousness to life. It is life to be sure, but it's more than life. So the plants will have both energy and life. Animals will have the vital energy, life, and consciousness. Human beings will have the vital energy, life, consciousness, and rightness. So that little bit of being human is what Mencius considered the goodness of being human. You have a question? No? Okay. Now that is infinitesimal, that's very small. He uses the idea of sprout, like the sprout, like maybe the water is about to gush forth and the fire is about to burn, or the flower in the very beginning only just a sprout that can very easily be destroyed. That little bit of something, which makes a human qualitatively, this is not a quantitative statement, qualitatively different from other animals. And he makes it very explicit. That little something is commiseration, or we use a common term, sympathy. He considers sympathy as a defining characteristic of being human. Sympathy, empathy, or compassion. In the Greek tradition, this notion that human beings are rational animals, so putting human rationality as very distinctive. And we also have all kinds of other ways of trying to describe the uniqueness of being human. But this notion about sympathy or empathy is based upon the idea that rationality is something you have to learn. Any skill like linguistic ability, you have to learn. If you're going to use tools, like human beings are tool users, you really have to learn. But sympathy is something you don't have to learn. In other words, it's natural. It's innate. If a human being, a defining characteristic of being human is the human ability to be sympathetic. There are two very interesting arguments now. One is to say we're born natural. In other words, we're born with all the instinctual demands that we possess. We're just like animals. We're born with all these features. And we then try to learn to be human by acquiring all kinds of values from the outside. We acquire the linguistic competence, we acquire the art of reasoning, we acquire the ability to do things. So the acquisition of values from the outside help human beings to become human. So some people say human beings are social beings because they're social beings, they're shaped by the environment, and therefore they can learn and continue to learn and gradually become more and more human. So humanization or ritualization. Yes?
So Mencius was saying that that's just what people do, or is he saying that's what people should do?
you have a third choice. That's not people do or people should do. That is what people are. Human beings are endowed with sympathy in the very beginning. Just being human, not how to do this or what I should do or should not do. Being sympathetic is being human.
I meant in terms of like acquiring skills or knowledge in order to like become human. Like, does that mean that everything we do is actually our own way of like becoming more humane or more human, or I don't know?
Yeah, that, what you describe is not a Mencian position. It's not a Mencius position. It's a position that we normally subscribe to, and it's a position that we're going to discuss next week, which means that is all the things we learn to acquire, then gradually we learn to be human. So we learn what we should do to overcome what we normally do. That's the way to become moral. That's the way to acquire virtues. So it is against our instincts, right? Socialization is against our instincts because our instinctual demands, if they are allowed to be expressed freely, will be in major trouble. So you really need that kind of social conditioning constraint. But that's not the Mencian position. That's why I think it's difficult to say what the position is. The position is that the difference between the human and all the other animals is very small. Let's focus on that small difference, the small difference of what we are, not what we do or what we ought to do. What we are is we are sympathetic beings. We are human beings with feelings of sympathy. This is the Mencian argument. Go ahead.
What if you just don't have feelings? I mean,
Is it possible? That's a big question, the Mencian question. Is it possible?
Well,
Is it possible for a human being not to have feelings? The answer is no. You can be angry, you can be resentful, you can be all kinds of things. It's not possible for a human being not to have feeling because human beings are sensitive beings. By definition, we are sensitive beings. Because what you say, I don't have feelings, is figurative speaking, right?
well, no, I'm actually talking about like a sociopath, like someone who,
Oh my gosh,
who like
then,
really doesn't have.
No,
I
we
know
certainly-
that's sympathy.
Pardon me?
Right, people who like just are not,
Yeah.
just don't have sympathy, for instance.
Okay, so that now
Are they not human?
from the Mencian point of view,
Okay.
the humanity is gone. See, another thing is we can be inhuman. If your heart is being so paralyzed, we don't have any feeling towards anyone else. So we're not being human from the Mencian point of view.
I would agree.
That's the uniqueness of being human. So you can say, there's so many exceptional cases to be sure, right?
Mhm.
But to be human is to be sensitive, to have feeling, and especially feeling of sympathy.
Mhm.
This is very true with Buddhism, the idea of compassion, but it's a totally different argument. So this is Mencian position. But it's only a sprout, only a possibility. And those people, the scholars, cultivate and vigorously try to cultivate that little spark of being human. Most of us, belittled people, ignore it. When we ignore it and we try to get rid of it, often, then gradually we help ourselves to become so dehumanized or desensitized, we don't feel. From an ancient point of view, we see a lot of people who are not feeling, not sensitive. These are not humans. And we can dehumanize ourselves to the extent that we like worse than animals. Animals are also feeling beings, but human beings can become totally without feeling. Yes.
What's the difference between the cultivation you mentioned here, in Mencius versus the learning in Xu?
Sure. Very, very different cultivation, right? One is to allow what you have to flow. The other one is to try to struggle to acquire what you do not have, so you become a moral person. There are two very different ways. We know naturally we're not going to be moral, so we need to try to learn from the outside and try to shape